Hello and welcome to The Lucky Roll, an eclectic channel for eclectic games. And today we're reviewing Evil Dead 2: The Board Game by Jesco Games. A game that came out in 2020 and is not to be confused with the failed Kickstarter release of 2016 that never delivered the game to backers. Evil Dead 2: The Board Game is an action cue-based board game with traitor mechanics based upon the movie of the same name with Bruce Campbell and directed by Sam Raimi. Evil Dead 2: The Board Game is a spoofball horror where monsters known as Deadites assault players in a cabin in the woods. Players must search through the cabin and the forest areas outside of it for pages of the Necronomicon, the book that summoned the horrors in the first place, and use those pages to close the portal that's releasing Deadites into the world. If they manage this, then the world is saved and the players win. They also periodically find items such as chainsaws and shotguns and pieces of chicken that help them survive the hordes of Deadites. There is, however, a traitor mechanic where players will periodically have to draw a corruption card, and if a player secretly draws a Deadite card, they join the Deadites in assaulting the players and compete to use the pages of the Necronomicon to reinforce the portal so that they can summon even more demon hordes into the world. If they manage to delay the players long enough that the corruption deck is exhausted, or worse yet, manage to actually reinforce the portal, then the players lose and the world is doomed. If the event deck is exhausted, all players lose, regardless of whether they're Deadites or human. This is a game for 3 to 6 players, and it also comes with an extras pack expansion that I was fortunate enough to pick up, which includes 2 new bosses and extra Deadite figures such as animals from the forest, and physical figures of the items in the game such as the chainsaw, the Kandarian dagger, shotguns, and barricades. This is a game that is largely out of stock, unfortunately, in most retail outlets. I really shouldn't review it as it's not the easiest game to get anymore, but this is a franchise that's beloved to me. And a quick look online at the time of writing, I found that you can still find some copies of these games in mom and pop stores and lots of sealed copies on eBay. So I have selfishly decided to review it mainly so I can force my friends to play it some more with me. The mechanics are simple enough and the instruction book is relatively straightforward. However, there is moments of ambiguity that will have you rereading the entire thing. Nevertheless, a half-hour read is generally sufficient to get the rules into your head. The game is fast-paced, fun and straightforward, and combat is relatively simple. On a player's turn, they draw an event card, which generally spawns Deadites and sets a game condition. Players then have 2 or 3 actions each, depending on player count, in which to move, attack, trade, scavenge, or cast a spell, depending on how many pages of the Necronomicon that a player carries. Once all players have taken their action, the Deadites on the board move and attack accordingly, with periods where a boss will be summoned who can be substantially tougher than most of the normal Deadites. Players must also be careful to not be surrounded by Deadites, because if they occupy a space with more than 3 Deadites, then they are automatically hit and take a wound before any rolls take place. Combat is done with 3 dice rolls, and chainsaws aptly and thematically signify player successes. Blank symbols represent a failure, and a Deadite symbol indicates a failure where the player takes a wound if they roll more failures than successes. Players must also do a virtue check with failures in combat, or as an added cost for various spell actions that they can take with Necronomicon pages. A virtue check is where the traitor mechanic of the game comes into play. There are 24 corruption cards with 3 Deadite cards and 21 human cards. If a player draws a Deadite card, then they join the hordes in attacking other players and succeed if the players fail to close the portal. They do not, however, have to reveal themselves, as a Deadite can secretly work to undermine the players. Deadite players can also reveal themselves or be revealed, which replaces their figure with a Deadite version and allows them greater freedom of movement because Deadite minis will now ignore them. If they attack and defeat a human player, they can give the player one of their own corruption cards face down or force them to draw a new one, which is great fun as it sows the seed of doubt for other players about whether there's a new traitor in the midst or not. Finally, there is a spell mechanic that players can utilize depending on how many pages of the Necronomicon that they hold. There are different types of spells, but mainly they can reveal the identity of other players, use spells to command Deadites, or even bend time itself. Every time they do this, however, they must take virtue checks, and players who use the Necronomicon to defend themselves and others may find themselves at greater risk of corruption. The people at Jasco Games are obvious fans of the franchise, as there is a lot of care and love given to the IP here. The box itself is a great touch, with the protective sleeve showing an inactive Necronomicon book being revealed with an active one once the sleeve is removed. The components are nice, and the extra box itself is a worthy purchase, as it includes new minis that are a lovely addition to the base game, as well as 8 new event cards. It's also worth noting and applauding Jasco Games for their service to the board game community in offering a free copy of their game to all the failed 2016 Kickstarter campaign for only the cost of shipping. The instruction book is easy and amusing to read, as it retains a sense of sardonic humour in parts and gives the impression that the team behind this had a real pride and love in the game. I personally loved the game. It's dripping in theme and is fast-paced in its play once all players are familiar with the rules. You can play several games in a night, and because of people's familiarity with the franchise and the obvious zaniness in the game, you won't find it hard to get players to try this game with you, especially if they are rabid fans of the movie. My obvious enthusiasm aside, this is a standard enough zombie horde game that encompasses its theme very well. If you are just a fan of the movies, however, and not a board gamer, this is still a lovely possession to have and to display next to your Evil Dead collection, with the added bonus that it's a fun and simple game that you can easily play with other fans who are not board gamers. So if you do see it, it is worth picking up, as I believe it has a higher than average chance of being brought to the table than other games because of the popularity of its intellectual property and the quality of its components. I've had games like The Walking Dead or Marvel Zombies that fans of have thought, yeah, I could play this. Whereas when I showed this to fans of Evil Dead, their reaction was generally, oh my god, I must play this. This game is a gem that I am glad to have in my collection, and if you want to see me unboxing it for the very first time, please check the link that James will kindly provide here or the description box below so that you can see what is in this little treasure trove. As always, if you enjoy these videos, please like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And until next time, this is Sean, signing off with a nice little groovy.